Hi everyone, welcome to another Blender tutorial. To commemorate my 500th subscriber, I'm releasing this two-part tutorial on photogrammetry generation using the open source software Meshroom. If you're interested in learning more, please subscribe to get updates from my channel and stay tuned for part 2, which I will release soon. I'd like to take a moment to personally thank everyone who's taken the time to watch my tutorials, and particularly those 500 who have subscribed. I didn't think I would get even this far when I started back in October of 2020, so thank you very much. So, without further delay, let's get started with part 1 of this tutorial, which will be generating 3D models of real objects using photogrammetry in Meshroom. Apart from just running the reconstruction process with just the default workflow, I will also show you some quick and easy ways to re-topologize your mesh and produce more useful UV unwraps of the reconstructed texture maps. I will then use this technique to recolor parts of the texture. The first thing you're going to need to do is to take some photos of an object that you want to turn into a 3D model. I took this meerkat thing out of the garden and turned it into a 3D model. You want to take photos from multiple angles around the object. I took about 60 pictures for this object, but I'd recommend at least 100 or more. Try and take as many photos from as many angles as possible, but try to avoid taking 2 photos from the same angle. Also, make sure that the object is entirely within each photo. Taking photos on an overcast day works best, as you get a lot of uniform diffuse lighting. If you do end up taking photos on a clear sunny day, you'll probably end up with one side of your object being unnaturally brighter than the other side. If this happens, I'd recommend using a software package called Agisoft Texture Delighter on your final model to make the lighting more uniform. It's a free software package and can be downloaded from this website. I also find having some high contrast objects that appear in multiple photos in the background and foreground helps with the feature matching process. Once you've taken your photos of the object you want to turn into a 3D model, you'll need to download Meshroom version 2021 1.0 from this website and save it to your computer. And then unzip the file to a location of your choosing. Okay, so the first thing you want to do is to drag your photos into Meshroom. So I'm just going to navigate to the directory. I'm going to import my low resolution rescaled images of my meerkat. Just highlight them all and drag them into this left panel here, and Meshroom will start the import process. And here you can see a list of all my photos of the meerkat. Okay, so this is the workflow we have here for generating a photogrammetry model. So for the most part, you can just leave this pretty much the same. There's a lot of different options in here that you can set. You can click on each of these different nodes in the workflow, and you can pull down these menus, and you can see there's a lot of properties in here that you can change. Like for example, sensor width and sensor height, but hopefully it's got that from the camera database already. And if you want to know what any of these options do, you can just hover your mouse cursor over them and it gives you a brief description of what they do. But as I said, the default workflow is pretty much good as it is. You don't really need to change anything. For this tutorial, we're going to just change the last node here, which is the texturing one. So you can see here the texturing side option. So this is the number of pixels for the side of the image texture. So I'm just going to lower it to 1024 at the moment just to speed up the whole process so we get to the texturing node and finish that as quickly as possible, because we're actually going to run this node twice. Okay, so once you've done that, you just want to click on the first node and just press start. Okay, so it's going to ask you to create a new project folder where it's going to save all the output data from all these nodes as it goes. So if it does crash for some reason, you can just go back and start it from the last node that finished. So if you just press save, so just give it a name. I'm just going to give it meerkat_1. I spelt it wrong. Meerkat1, and press save. And that will, and then you have to press start again to start the reconstruction process. And this progress bar at the top tells you how far you are through this process, and it even changes the color on each of the nodes. And you can also press Task Manager here and you can see how far it's gone through the reconstruction process. So green means complete, orange means in progress, and blue is still to be completed. So depending on the resolution of the images that you've used for your model and the sort of GPU you have, this can take quite a while. So go make yourself a cup of coffee and we'll be back soon. Okay, so that reconstruction's finished. Took quite a while on my laptop, but if you've got a high-end GPU, it's probably going to be a lot quicker. But you can see here on the right-hand side now, in the 3D viewer window, you might need to click the textured button here. You can see these little objects here are the reconstructed camera angles. So you can see I took photos of the meerkat from about 3 different angles, and then some extra ones on top to get some texture information from the top of the meerkat. And you can also see there's some objects here in the foreground and the background. So what's been shown here is the point cloud. So we'll be able to see a full 3D reconstruction of the model once we export it to Blender. But you can see here we've got about 49,000 vertices from 65 different camera angles. You can also see here on the left-hand side, on each of our photos, this little green camera icon, which means that it's reconstructed the camera positions for that particular photo. And it looks like it's managed to use every single photo, which is really good. Okay, so let's export this reconstructed mesh now to Blender for some processing. Now, you can leave Meshroom open for this next step. We'll come back to it in a little bit. Okay, so I've just loaded Blender now. I'm using Blender version 2.92. So I'm just going to delete everything from the scene, and I'm going to go File, Import, and Wavefront.obj. Okay, so I've just navigated to the Photogrammetry directory where I've saved my project. So it generates a folder in this directory where you save the project file called Meshroom Cache. So you want to double click on that, and you'll get a folder for each of the different nodes that were processed in Meshroom. So the textured mesh that was produced is saved to the texturing folder. So double click that. So I'm just going to navigate to the directory. Depending on the number of times that you've run this reconstruction process for this project, you'll get a number of different folders. So I'm just going to load the reconstructed meerkat one that I have. You'll get a textured mesh.mtl for materials and a textured mesh.obj. You want to open the obj file in Blender. So double click that. Okay, see, we've brought in our reconstructed scene here. You can press the viewport shading button here and that'll apply some of the textures that it's reconstructed. So you can see we've got our meerkat here, we've got the table that it was imaged on, and we've got some of the background and foreground objects here. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is just tidy up this mesh by deleting a whole lot of the reconstructed mesh that we don't want and just keep the meerkat here. Just a word of warning, don't adjust the rotation, the translation, or the scale of any of these meshes while we're doing this editing. It's important because we're going to re-export this mesh from Blender and bring it back into Meshroom, and we need to make sure that the orientation, scale, and translation of this object remains exactly the same. So the reason we want to re-export this mesh and bring it back into Meshroom is because if you have a look at the materials, actually let's just do I'm just going to click on my mesh and go tab into edit mode, select faces, select all faces, and let's go to the UV editor. So this is the unwrapping of our texture, and you can see it looks absolutely horrible. There's just color everywhere and there's bits of mesh everywhere. So we want to try and UV unwrap this later in the tutorial to try and make it a bit more sensical. So just unclick it, re-click it to select it, and I want to keep just the area around the meerkat. So I'm just going to pan around so I see it from the top view, right on top like that. Press tab to enter edit mode, and you can see there's an awful lot of vertices there. Now I'm just going to unselect. You can press Alt and A to unselect, and then press B for box select, and I'm just going to select a region around the meerkat like that. You also want to make sure you have X-ray mode on here as well, so we get any vertices behind the mesh that's visible. So just select that region again with B, and you can see that's just selected the meerkat and bit of the table that it's sitting on. Then you want to go to select and invert, and that'll select everything that's not the region that I selected. And then press X and press delete vertices. And you can see that's pretty much deleted everything in the scene that I didn't want. You can see there's one little stray vertex there, so I'm just going to select that and press delete. And that looks like we got everything. So what I'm also going to do is try and just remove some of this table around his feet. So go back into edit mode, select faces, and press C to bring up your little brush tool and just paint the area around it. You can even increase the brush and make it a bit quicker to get rid of this outside bit. So you can be a bit rough with the vertex selection on the outer edges until you get close to his feet. And then just scale the brush tool down with your mouse cursor. And then I'm just going to delete that first, so press X and vertices. And you can see I've got rid of most of the stuff around his feet, but I'm just going to tidy it up a little bit with a smaller brush tool. I'm being fairly quick with this tidying up, but you can spend more time on it to get a more accurate model if you like. So you can see we've got this massive hole in the bottom, so we want to start fixing things like that. Okay, so the first thing that we can do is just select our mesh, go back into edit mode, select everything, then go up to the mesh window here, clean up. Let's delete loose first. So you can see it's deleted 6 vertices and 2 edges that weren't attached to the mesh. So next thing you're going to do is select everything again, go mesh, clean up, and go degenerate dissolve. And that's removed 6 vertices, 26 edges, and 24 faces. Okay, the next thing you want to do is select everything again, clean up, and you want to go merge by distance. And bring up your merge by distance window here. And for my model, I found a value of 0.00015 worked quite well, and just select here. And you can see it's removed 256 vertices. Okay, and the last thing we want to do in this menu is go mesh, clean up, fill holes. And you want to bring this, I'll just show you what this is going to do. So bring your slides value from 4 down to 0, and that'll fill in the bottom surface of your mesh. Okay, so the next thing you want to do is to re-topologize your mesh. So there's a few simple ways you can do this. You can just click on your mesh, you can click on this Object Data Properties button over here, and go remesh. Now you can try either of these modes, voxel or quad remesher. I might also bring your attention to a handy add-on that comes with Blender. If you go to Edit, Preferences, and search for 3D, and you can see you've got a 3D print toolbox here. So if it's not already ticked, tick that on there, and then come back out, click your mesh, press N to bring up this tab here, and you'll see you've got this 3D print tab here. So you can do all sorts of things like check the volume of, or surface area of your mesh. You can also do some checks. These are mainly used for 3D printing models, but it's quite useful for cleaning up your mesh. So you can go check all, and you can see it's got a few errors that it's detected which you can fix. You don't need to worry too much about these because we're not going to be 3D printing it. But if you want to use the quad remeshing, you need to make sure it's manifold. So you can click on that, and it's now reporting that it's a manifold mesh. Now you can go over here to your quad remesh. Oh, just here, the number of faces. So this is going to be the target number of faces that it's going to remesh this, this object. So if you remember back to Meshroom, it was reporting we had about 49,000 faces. So this is going to significantly reduce the density of those faces. So let's try 4,000. I suspect it's going to be a little bit too coarse, but let's press OK. This just takes a few seconds. And you can kind of see what it's done to the mesh. It's just given you a much nicer topology, but you can see it's looking a bit too coarse. So let's just undo that. And let's press remesh again. Let's try 15,000 and press OK. Okay, so that's looking a little bit better. It's got a bit more detail. You can even sort of just right click and go shade smooth and just see what it looks like. And that's not actually too bad. It's kept a lot of the good detail. So I'm happy with that mesh the way it is. So the next step in this tutorial was to try and more sensibly unwrap this model, UV unwrap this model, so we can get a nicely unwrapped texture. So you remember earlier in the tutorial that UV map of our texture was just a complete mess. So let's try and fix that. So let's start just by clicking on our mesh. Let's drag another window over here, and we want to go to the UV editor. And let's just create a new mesh, and I'm going to set this to 2048 and just press OK. Okay, let's just select all the faces, go UV, let's just start pressing UV Unwrap. And then I am going to start with a Smart UV project. So let's just try that with the default settings. So it's looking a lot better than our original model, but I think we can still do some work with that. Let's just start by adjusting the angle limit. Let's just increase it to 76. So you can see recognizable bits of the mesh. So this is the bottom of his feet. You can see the sides of the mesh. So what you can do is just get your brush tool out from the front view. Just select everything and go UV, project from view, and then go select invert, and that'll select everything on the back, and go UV, just line it up the opposite direction, and go UV, project from view. And now if you select everything, select all the faces, and go UV, pack islands. And you can see then it's just sort of maximize the unwrapping to utilize the available space. And you can kind of try it like that. And let's go out of edit mode. So you want to select your final mesh that you're happy with after you've re-topologized it and smoothed it, and go File, Export as an OBJ, and just save it. I'll just save it back in my original directory. So I've created a folder called Modified Meshes, and let's just call this Meerkat 3, and save. So I've just gone back into Meshroom from my project that was left open. So the last thing you want to do is click on this bar here and right click and go remove. So what that does is passes the mesh from the mesh filtering stage into the texturing stage for texturing. But instead we're going to pass in the mesh that we just edited in Blender. So you can see there's an empty mesh node, and it wants the file path for that mesh. So I'm just going to paste in the file path for that mesh that I just exported from Blender. And so I'm going to put the file name at the end, so slash, and put meerkat3.obj and press enter. And for this, what have we got? Texture size 2048. So we'll leave it at the resolution that we UV unwrapped it at. And you can choose what file type you want to save the texture as. I'm just going to leave it as JPEG. And there's a whole lot of settings here for UV unwrap settings. Let's just leave it at the default now, because that'll just use the unwrap that I just did in Blender. And with that set, you can just click on that last node and press start. And that should just take a little while. Okay, so you can see with the progress bar that it's finished. So just minimize that, and let's go back into Blender. So with my old mesh saved, I'm just going to go File, New, General, delete everything from my new Blender scene, and let's bring in the final mesh. So again, go File, Import, Wavefront, Texturing folder again, and I can see the date that it was processed. I'm going to bring up my textured mesh. Okay, so you can see it's brought in our same optimized mesh that we'd worked on previously. But if you press Viewport Shading, I've got my textured meerkat here. And if you just slide open the window here and bring up a UV editor and select texture 1001, you can see we have our unwrapped texture for the meerkat, and that was just done with the project from view. So you can see we've got the front and the back of the meerkat. So what you can do with that then is export this texture, and you can make changes to this texture. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to export my texture. So I'm going to go Image, Save a Copy, and I'm just going to rename it Texture 1002. So I keep the original as well. So I'm just going to load my texture into Affinity Photo and I'm going to recolor it. So I'm going to change this from a pink meerkat to a blue meerkat. So this is a UV unwrap that I performed earlier. So you can see it was done in a slightly different way. I'm going to use my recolor tool and I'm just going to paint a blue material over the pink material and turn this into a blue meerkat. So this just took me some time, so we'll come back at the end. So I'm just going to save my modified texture and I'm going to go back into Blender. So I'm going to go to the shader editor window and open up my modified texture. Now if I render, you can see I've now got a blue meerkat from a pink meerkat. So this is some of the cool stuff that you can do with Meshroom. I'd encourage you to have a look at the different parameters that you can change in the pipeline and see what sort of results you can get. Thank you very much for watching this tutorial. If you enjoyed it, please don't forget to subscribe. I'll be releasing part 2 of this tutorial in the coming days.